We don't really want to waste time studying the complexities that the people at the time were dealing with. And oftentimes, these people that were living thousands of years ago, they had very similar questions. They had complicated situations going on in their lives, difficult events happening just constantly, and they also had these questions that popped up in their lives. Just think about how much life has changed between our parents and grandparents, right? Our parents had to live in a communist government. They had to live in the Soviet Union and had to struggle with these questions like, do we give an oath of loyalty to a Soviet atheistic country that was specifically anti-God and give an oath of loyalty to it, and then earlier before that actually pick up arms and fight for that country? They had to deal with complex questions that divided churches, like, do we register our church under government surveillance? Then that would require the governments would control when you could get baptized. It would control and record everybody that attended the services, who led the churches, and would surveil your life. These are the issues just our parents have. We have different issues and different questions that we struggle with, especially in the realm of governments. We live in a free country. We have rights. We get to vote, but we still end up having these questions and struggles of how much obedience to the government, where do we obey, how much do we resist the government, how much do we get involved in government. And Jesus answers that question quite complexly. He answers it fully understanding how complex the reality is. And we see that because he addresses the complex situations and complex questions that the people have during his time. So let's look at this complex situation that Jesus is going through. The question that Jesus is being asked is really a sly question. It isn't coming from the right motives. Last week we heard a sermon about how Jesus told a parable to the leaders of the people of how they were hypocrites and really murderers in their intentions. And these leaders, these political and religious leaders, they got really offended at Jesus. But instead of repenting, they instead doubled down and tried even harder to discredit Jesus and to get him killed. And that's the next couple questions, the next couple situations are all going to be that. We're going to be looking at the first one. So, first, these people, it says, then they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to him in order to trap him in a statement. Who is this they? They, in this context, is the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. It's the religious and political rulers, the acting government in Jerusalem. They had many sects, and they would follow these sects would follow their own teachers. They were kind of like political parties mixed with religious denominations. Like, imagine if we had that today, right? There would be a Baptist denomination that would be in the government, that would be ruling the government, making laws. There would be the Catholic denomination trying to make their laws. We Baptists would be trying to prohibit alcohol or something, or dancing or clapping, and the Catholics would go crazy. There'd be a charismatic denomination and ruling party, and that's kind of the situation that they had to deal with. These religious people with their own theological view of the world, with their own theological views, made laws and had to argue about which laws to make and how to make them. The Bible mentions a couple different parties. It mentions the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the elders, and now it mentions the Herodians. Only in this situation it mentions the Herodians. We have seen Pharisees throughout the book of Mark, throughout our series. We have seen the Pharisees. They are the main opposition to Jesus. Every time Jesus is preaching somewhere and he's having people question him, the Pharisees are there. We already remember much about him, but we know that they viewed themselves as the most pure. They followed the law of God to the max. They even wrote their own laws and added their own purity laws to follow, and wanted the people to follow them as well. They wanted the people to see the Pharisees, their party, as the most righteous and religious rulers, religious leaders for the people, the people's example to follow God. And here we see them again, but now teaming up and grouping, coming in a group with another party to discredit Jesus. We see that the other party here is the Herodians. This is a very interesting little sect. These guys are the schemers and plotters. Their theology is very interesting. It's very secular and symbolic. They viewed Herod and the king's, his sons, right, all the line of Herod, as the worldly Messiah, as the symbolic Messiah. They thought Herod could be the Messiah that would, under the rule of the Romans, bring Israel to the power and the blessing that God promised them. So they viewed the Messiah as a very symbolic figure and a very political figure. And they just used that theology to gain power for themselves, to grow off the backs of the Roman rulership and off of Herod's rulership, to actually grow in their own power, in their own authority over the people. So we see that these people, they actually have very fleshly motives. They have very human motives disguised as theological arguments. They are bringing a very current issue of the day, a very troubling question for many people at that time. The question of, are you pro-tax or anti-tax? What they think is going to happen is that a rabbi that is popular with the people, he would have to be anti-tax, because the people are anti-tax. They do not want to pay taxes to Caesar. So what the Pharisees want and kind of expect is that Jesus is going to say, don't pay taxes to Caesar, and the Herodians will immediately go and snitch on him to the Roman authorities, and the Romans will come, lock him up, and he will be discredited as a false Messiah. If he fails to do that, if he fails to actually say that they shouldn't pay taxes, then they'll just point out to the people, like, hey, guys, you're all against the tax. Look at your Messiah. He wants you to obey the Roman oppressors. this is clearly a false Messiah. So it's a win-win for them. The Herodians, it's also a win-win for them. Either he approves the tax, and that's good for them, or he says that they shouldn't have taxes, and so they can immediately remove this growing popular threat that is rising in Jerusalem. So they came and said to him, "Teacher, we know that you are truthful and defer to no one, for you are not partial to any, but teach the way of truth." You are truthful and defer to no one, for you are not partial to any, but teach the way of God in truth. We see that the Pharisees and Herodians, they are complete opposites. They are enemies, like Democrats and Republicans. They don't agree on anything. They just want to undercut each other. They want to cause problems for each other. But when it comes to Jesus, when it comes to true and righteous teaching from God, they stand united. They both have this sinful plan to get Jesus killed, to get Jesus disrespected. They both come with this position in their hearts because sin really unites those people that are in opposition to God, no matter what. And we also see the way they are coming and speaking to him, right? They're lying about what they believe. They don't believe that Jesus is speaking the truth. They don't believe that Jesus is a righteous and a good teacher. They just want to get him killed. They're trying to use flattery to put Jesus in the mindset of telling the truth no matter what consequences he will face. They want him to just say, well, if I am such a true and righteous teacher, I'll tell the people the truth. You shouldn't pay taxes, or the reverse. But everybody there, especially the people there, are expecting him to be against taxes. We think, while we read this, we might think this seems a little overdramatic. Like, in our personal devotions, we're reading this and we're just like reading and we're like, well, the Jews really don't like the Romans, so they don't like paying taxes to them. And Jesus just answers them, whatever your opinion is, you got to pay your taxes. And we move on from this verse like, all right, I'll pay my taxes. I got it, Jesus. And we don't recognize how deep of a conflicting theological issue this was for people, an issue that offended their conscience, and that actually looks was a matter of obeying God's law for these people. The people that are asking him this question know that this is a trap because it is a religious question in its roots, at least in the people's eyes. And so when we see in verse 15, but he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, "Why are you testing me?" This isn't God being critical of people seeking to worship God properly and seeking to make sure that our taxes go to the right place, right? If we ever question in our minds, hey, I really don't like where my taxes are going, that's not like God is just like, man, terrible. How could you ever question where your taxes are going? This is specifically, this criticism is aimed because they are using a question that actually bears weight in God's eyes, that actually bears weight in the eyes of God's law and in the people's hearts, and using it to try and trap him and try to ensnare him to get him killed. So we really have to look at what is the theology against this government and against this tax. So we see that these taxes and these coins, these denarii that were being used, were seen as a violation of the Ten Commandments for these people. Specifically the first two. You shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make for yourself a graven image. And these instructions weren't just mentioned once. They are repeated constantly throughout the Old Testament. If you guys look through it, it's mentioned at least 5 times that you shall not have idols, you shall have no other gods, you shouldn't make idols. And in the ancient world, coins were viewed as a form of metal idol if they had an image of a god. So coins were often made in temples because they acted as banks. All of your money, you would donate it to the temple, and then, or for offerings, you would offer it to the temple, and then temples, they would act as a bank and print the money that they got, the gold and silver, into coins to actually act as a bank and give them back to people. But they were giving back these little idols, little images to people. And the Greeks and Romans were famous for this. At this time, the denarius is minted by the emperors of Rome. They are the only people that can officially make this money. The official religion in the empire is the worship of emperors. We hear a lot about Roman paganism, and we hear a lot about these gods, but really the most important god for the Romans during the time of the empire was the emperor. He was the god that you would access all other gods through. And this religion, this cult of the emperor, was actually the reason of persecution against the early church. Romans would require anybody that was in their empire to offer a sacrifice and say that Caesar or the emperor was Lord. And Christians said, we can't do that. We can only say Jesus is Lord. We'll pay our taxes, we'll do everything, but we cannot say that Caesar is Lord. And so there was this persecution against Christians because of this religion, this issue that would grow into something larger that Jesus is just answering now, but it would get stronger and more out of hand. This religion just started just before Jesus was born, just a few years before he was born during the reign of Augustus. Augustus Caesar, the first Caesar, started this religion, and it continued to grow during the life of Jesus in the reign of Tiberius, who was the emperor then. Both the coins, the older one from Augustus and the newer one from Tiberius, had an image of the emperor, kind of like our money today with our presidents. And they would have an inscription on their money. They didn't have the inscription, "In God We Trust," like we do nowadays. They had an inscription that said that they were worthy of worship, that they were gods, that they were divine, and that they were worthy of worship. And many Jews, hearing that, they were absolutely disgusted, just reading that on a coin, on an idol that was being traded in the empire. They said, how can a mere man, especially a Gentile man, say that he is God or equal with God? They rebelled over this issue multiple times, and they would have even seen religious Jews, traditional Jews that followed Judaism would not even use a denarius. They would use other currencies in that region, Herod's currencies, other currencies that they had, temple currencies in that time, to avoid even handling this idol. But these coins, they had the Roman god's image, the Caesar's image, and even while you had it, they belonged to Caesar himself. And so Jesus tells the people, he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. He's saying, you don't own that coin anyway. You don't own your money anyway. Pay Caesar with it. He put his image on it. It is his coin. But that description, that wording, his image, creating something in your own image, it's, as Christians, it reminds us of Genesis. Genesis 1:27 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. God created each and every one of us. He stamped his image on us and sent us out into circulation in the world. And even though we are being traded hands by different governments, by different countries, we are started off in Russia. Our parents started off in Russia. We got sent over here. No matter where we are, we belong to God. And because we belong to God, even if we are under a sinful government, a government worshiping false gods and creating idols, that does not give us the moral excuse to live in rebellion and disobedience to that government. In fact, the opposite is true. In verse 17, it says, Jesus said to them, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. To rend means to give what is owed. You owe this to Caesar, he says. It's not just you being nice or just God telling you to give this to Caesar, but actually saying that you do owe the government what you give it. What happens after that, Jesus says, that is no sin on you. That denarius, that image that Caesar sinfully created, that is not a moral wrong that you are participating in. But living a life of disobedience and disorder is, in fact, sinful because God has made a law above all the laws of man. God has a transcendent law. So, if we read Romans 13, 1 and 2, it really goes down to 7, but just briefly, every person is to be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. God put these authorities, put these laws and governments over us because he is gracious. He organized the world into structures. We don't often see that when we're living our life. We see that these structures as restrictive, but really it's for everyone's good and for everyone's pleasure that God put into place these structures in our life for his own honor as well. Think about all the areas in your life where you owe something to somebody, or there are expectations for you. There are different places like your parents. We all owe our parents obedience. Our bosses and our employers, we all owe our work. Would they pay us? We have to work for them. They have our expectations for that. Teachers, they go out there and they try to teach you something, as hard as that is for some of us. And we owe our attention to them, our respect to them. Elders, we have people that are older than us, that have more wisdom. We owe it to them to hear them out, to show them respect for the life they lived. Our neighbors in society, we can't act like we own the whole block as much as we might want to, especially sometimes when we gather for bonfires and stuff. But like we owe our neighbors and the people around us a certain amount of respect and courtesy. Our relationships, we owe people in our relationships the attention, the care that a relationship requires to actually maintain. Our church, we owe a lot to our church. We owe our service, our care to the church. We owe our obedience to church authorities and the decisions of the church. The government's authority is just one other small part, area in our life where we owe respect and obedience, where we have to submit, where Christ calls us to submit. God has sovereignly placed us in different circumstances in this universe and gives us certain people in our lives where He knows how it will shape us, how it should shape us, and He desires and knows where we should submit. Through our submission, we show obedience to God. Through our care of how we actually live in this country and obey the people above us, shows our care for God and shows the character of God that He produces within us. People around us living, they see our lives and they see how we talk about the government. They see how we joke about the government. They see what memes we like. They see what type of things we try to push on other people, and they all take that into account when looking at our testimony, when looking at what we say about God and what we believe. And Jesus, in His wisdom, He left us with a bulletproof legal defense for any circumstance. He told us to live giving everything we owe, fearing nothing. If we pay our taxes, if we're not stealing, if we're not cheating, there's no need to fear. If we are driving with a license and registration and insurance and the speed limit and not recklessly and not looking at the phone and all the other little things that you can get caught for, we have no reason to fear. This is God's just bulletproof, tell the cop and you're off the hook. I was obeying every single law There is nothing that can be held against you. There is no reason to fear in our life. That is the surpassing wisdom of God to give us this commandment to obey our authorities, to obey the authorities in place over us, so we don't have to suffer unjustly. But we, living in this fallen world, we have a defiant nature. Our flesh demands that things happen our way. We like to be the rulers of our own universe. We want everything to submit to us, to our desires. Just look at James 4:1 with me. What causes quarrels and what causes fights amongst you? Is it not that your passions are at war within you? We have the book of Proverbs full of warnings against quarrels and against making unwise decisions, especially in the realm of finance. And people still try to argue and try to say that there is space for rebellion against governments, for opposition against governments. We are so good at joking about and debating the political situations in our lives that most of the time we're not showing God's image to people. We just love to pick sides, and we love to get a little needle in to people that we disagree with, and we don't remember that God's image is stamped on all of us. And that should be the thing that is coming across loudest and clearest in our lives. And I just want us to remember, Christians can be divided by politics in their former life. The disciples were a very interesting, diverse group of people. They had Simon the Zealot, who was a Jewish patriot, who was completely against tax, was in the party that actually rebelled against Rome, against the tax. And it also had a disciple named Matthew, the tax collector that took on this Greek name and worked in the Roman system to collect the tax that Simon fought against. But in Christ, they found that peace and unity, the one goal that surpassed all their previous loyalties, all their previous opinions. They were all united by God's vision for a kingdom that was to come, God's kingdom that was not of this earth, but was still yet to come. And so, we should act with consideration when we are living on this earth, in consideration towards brothers and sisters that might not agree with every little opinion that we have. We should act in the roles that God has put us in this world, in the spheres of obedience that He has put us. Because God is in control of history. God has a plan for this world, and He's bringing everything to a certain conclusion that He desires. The government that is over us today isn't there by accident. God didn't know that this is how it would turn out. This was by His plan. He appointed the rulers that are above us today. And even though we live in a world with evil governments, evil rules, evil laws, and evil places our taxes can be used and our obedience is used, we owe to give them what God has said we owe them. Our full obedience in the matters that aren't against God, aren't explicitly anti-God. God will return and he will repay every ruler and every person their due. And we, while living on this earth, have to follow along with what Paul writes in 1 Timothy and pray for our authorities. Pray for the governments that God has put in place so that they could come to a knowledge of God, so that we could have peaceful lives. We can live in full obedience to God, even if we are to be persecuted, even if we are to be fully looked down upon as Christians. We don't see how God is leading to the coming of his kingdom. We only see little glimpses of it through prophecy and through world events. But we know that history will end on God's terms. And we all look forward to submitting to our King. We owe that submission to God, full submission to God. And that's what really amazed these people that came to question Jesus. This answer that we owe everything to God, and God, out of his goodness, out of his grace and wisdom, says that some of what we owe to God, we give to the people that are above us. We give to the people that are in authority. We owe God our lives. We owe God our new birth, not just the life that we have here, but the life that we will have eternally in his kingdom. And the struggles that we have to go through now, the questions and the problems that we face during this life are just a momentary problem that we have to struggle with during this time. We all have to remember that we are citizens of God's kingdom and that God's kingdom is coming. So I would like the worship team to come up. And I want to encourage us. Me and my Bible study, we have made it this practice to always pray for God's kingdom and for all people, specifically people in authority. God commands us to do this, and I think it's good practice for us to do it, to constantly be in that mindset of submission and looking forward to the kingdom that is yet to come. So please, we'll stand and then we'll pray, worship and we'll pray afterwards.